We keep hearing our favorite streamers say HYPERROLL is the meta. Press D to win. We hear about REROLL comps, but what's the difference between them and HYPERROLL? And finally, what about the rest of the comps? What category do they fall into? Are they different? I'm here today to answer these questions, as well as provide insights on how to generally play each type of comp. Hey everyone, and welcome to another ProGuides TFT video. Today, we're going to be talking about composition types, categorizing them, their pros and cons, going over a general play style for each type, and the best situations to play each, like galaxies or items. Knowing more plays than the opponents will increase your flexibility and help you get that first. Deciding which comp you're going is often informed by what type of comp it is, so this will help you enhance those decision-making powers and climb that ranked ladder. Before we dive in though, make sure to check out the link in the description and get to see all the content we'll be uploading for you guys, created by the top challenger players around the world to help you get better and hit that first place in your games. Our TFT coaching platform is also live on ProGuides.com with really active and awesome coaches, just one click away from helping you climb that ladder. I'll see you guys over there. TFT composition types. While these composition types persisted throughout all three sets, they dive in and out of the meta, so watch our videos to always know what's in or out of top level lobbies. HYPERROLL. Let's start with HYPERROLL comps, since they're a massive part of the 10.9 meta, something that was not happening before. The main reason for the rise of HYPERROLL were the consecutive buffs to one-cost units, and to a lesser extent, the 60% chance to get them at level 4. HYPERROLL comps rely on not constantly maintaining econ and using all your gold in massive spurts, trying to 3-star one-cost units, which you then snowball into fuller comps since they are really strong and grant you a win streak. A good example is the Shredder comp, which I prefer to call Unlimited Blade Works as a Fate fan, go Archer. It relies on 3-starring Xayah, Jarvan, and Caitlyn, Fiora, and possibly Rakan and Shen, snowballing Xayah into an unstoppable, Shredder. It utterly destroys anything with Bramble Vest on it, since the core items are Last Whisper, Quicksilver Sash, and Infinity Edge. Pros and cons of HYPERROLL. Let's look at the pros and cons of going HYPERROLL comps then. Pros: they are a very good way to start the game strong and usually keep your health pool during mid-game. Relatively doable when contested by one other person, since there are 29 of each one cost in the pool. The gameplay is relatively straightforward, with less decision-making than power level comps, for example, since the comp is set in stone earlier, thus transition decisions are almost non-existent. They're also easy to transition out of if you see yourself contested, since it's both early and the items the comps use are relatively universal and can be used in other comps. For example, Xayah items can go in Cybernetics or Rebels. Cons: when contested by more than 2 people, they are a surefire way into bottom 4. Make sure you scout before you play them. Most of them require a very specific set of items, for example, Last Whisper, IE, and QSS for Xayah or Bramble and Rabadons for Poppy, with a major difference in power level when you do not hit those items. They have very specific counters, which they often can do very little about, like Last Whisper Xayah or Aurelia or Vel'Koz for Poppy, AoE for Xayah, with Jinx often blasting her out of existence, and so on. General playstyle. There's a simple strategy to playing HYPERROLL comps. Contrary to popular belief, you do not start rolling every turn, trying to find those one-cost units you want. You play what you get as usual, obviously focusing on units the comp you decided to go for requires, until Terror Bursters. Try to win or lose streaks so that you have 50 gold at that point, or close to it. It's important that you do not level. After Terror Bursters, you should be 8/10 EXP to go to 5, retaining that 60% chance for one costs. That's when you roll all the way down, or to about 10 gold to get your units to 3 stars. You repeat the process for round 3 as well and roll at Infiltrators, but only if you haven't 3-starred the carry you need. If your carry, Xayah, Poppy, or TF, are 3-starred, the supporting cast of Jarvan, Leona, Caitlyn, etc. can be rolled for while maintaining the 50 gold checkpoint. The carry being 3-starred is the stabilizing point and determines whether you will roll down at Infiltrators again. From that point onwards, you play as normal, maintaining econ and leveling after you get the 3 stars you want to add more units to your comp. When do I play HYPERROLL then? The best situation to play HYPERROLL comps in the current meta is when you have the main units 2-starred by first carousel, in the worst case. If you don't, and they're contested, it will most likely prove difficult to find them when you roll at Terror Bursters. You'll have to scout a lot during the whole of round 2, counting how many units your contesters have and making the decision to go for the HYPERROLL comp of your choice or not. Items is the other factor in this decision. If you want to go Xayah and you get 3 tiers and a belt by first carousel, then it's probably time to get out quickly and play something else. You will have a hard time maneuvering into a top 4 with the wrong items, even if you hit your carries, so be like water, friend, and adapt. Slow roll, reroll. Moving on to slow roll comps. These were all the rage before patch 10.9, like Star Guardians and Mech Infiltrators. They have fallen off a bit due to repeated nerfs and changes, but are still strong under the right circumstances. Space Jam, for example, is still strong, but does poorly against Candyland, killing Poppy being a difficult endeavor. Slow roll comps rely on getting to 50 gold relatively quickly, leveling to 6 or 7, usually 6, and rolling to 50 every turn, slowly 3-starring your core units like Kai'Sa, Rumble, Annie, Darius, and so on. An example of a slow roll comp is our favorite comp to hate, Mech Infiltrator, which relies on having a strong 3-star Kai'Sa, 3-star Rumble, and Annie, as well as anything else you can get to that level. Pros and cons of slow roll. Let's look at the pros and cons of going slow roll comps then. Pros, they scale quite well into late game, relying on stronger units than HYPERROLL comps. Decreased popularity has led them to being easier to play uncontested, which in turn should result in an easy top 4. Cons, much harder to contest, possibly end up 7th and 8th, holding hands like Romeo and Juliet. Similar to HYPERROLL comps, item flexibility is still a problem, but not to that extent. For example, Kai'Sa with Shojin Hurricane and Morello has been seen destroying backlines the world over. Currently not great in the 10.9 meta because of being countered by other units in this meta. For example, Space Jam having difficulty killing Poppy, Xayah shredding the Super Mech, etc. General playstyle. Slow rolling comps are quite similar to HYPERROLL comps, with the main difference being that you do not roll down at Terror Bursters. You level to 6 at stage 3-5 or so, while maintaining the 50 gold checkpoint and slow roll for your comp. The main difference is that you do not have your units at the beginning like HYPERROLL. As such, you have to transition while slowly building your final comp. A good example is Mech Infiltrator, where 4 Vanguard is a good start until you get your Fizz, since they synergize well with mech items, and Kai'Sa will have a strong frontline to dive in and destroy people. When do I play slow roll then? The answer to when to play this type of comps is a function of units you get early, and items you choose or get. For example, to play Space Jam, a lot of rods early is a good indicator that you will be able to play the comp, while for Mech Infiltrator, you need Bramble Vest and possibly Quicksilver Sash to be competitive. Similarly, getting a lot of Darius early or a Fizz as you level to 5, those are also strong indicators that you can go for those comps. Power level. Finally, we reached the late game. That is what these comps are all about, and they do everything to get there as quickly as possible. Power level comps are on the rise right now, through a combination of the nerf of slow roll comps, buffs to certain units like Jinx, and the strong late game, which can be a weakness of HYPERROLL comps. They were always strong, just different versions of them. For example, it was Dark Stars in 10.8, whereas it's Brawler, Blasters, and Cybernetics or Rebels now. An example of power level comp is Rebels, where hitting level 8 is a must. The level 8 rush is not just to hit legendaries or 4 costs easier, but for the simple reason of needing an extra champion slot to complete the combo. Pros and cons of power level. Let's look at the pros and cons of going power level comps then. Pros. In their full comp, they usually have the best scaling, especially when 4 cost 3 stars are made. You won't always win with them, but you will almost definitely top 4 or top 2. Much more flexible starts since you're not locked into them at the start of the game. You can start Cybernetics and end up playing Kale or Rebels. Flexible start makes adapting easier. Item flexibility is also a strong advantage of these comps. For example, Cybernetics are almost item agnostic, besides perhaps a Last Whisper on Aurelia. Flexibility with items can mean flexibility with carries. If you hit MF items in a Blaster comp, you go with MF carry instead of Jinx, and so on. Cons. Take more time to get online. Have to play early game well to avoid taking too much damage. Not hitting Echo, Aurelia, Jinx, MF, Kale, and so on makes for very frustrating games. When contested, which they often are, they can be hard to play because of the scarcity of 4 costs and legendaries, who are your carries. General playstyle. Power level comps are the most difficult to navigate. The leveling process is the simplest part, where you usually level to 5 at 2-5 when win streaking, or naturally when lose streaking. Then level to 6 at 3-2, to 7 at 3-6 or 4-1, and to 8 at 4-1 or 4-3, depending on your win or loss streaking situation. Actually navigating that early game and managing to keep your health at a normal level, though, is really the important part. Here are some tips to help you do just that. Try to exploit synergies that give you stats as much as possible. For example, 3 Cybers, 2 Chrono, 2 Brawler, 2 Vanguard. 2-star units are win streak makers, especially early on. If you have a 2-star Graves, Mordekaiser, Darius, etc., don't hesitate to drop a synergy that does not give you much in exchange for the 2-star unit. Commit items that do well in many comps. Zrot, Portal, Morello, Last Whisper, Bramble Vest, Guardian Angel are all decent items that can give you power spikes early, and you can work toward comps that use them well as a result. Are all decent items that give you power spikes early, and you can work towards comps that use them well as a result. When do I play power level then? The answer to when to play this type of comp is usually when you're win streaking or lose streaking but have no clear direction. Your items are the biggest indicator of which direction you should take. If you have an Infinity Edge and a Last Whisper, you should either be going Rebels, Jinx, or Cybernetics if you haven't committed to a Xayah comp yet. Do not forget to scout, as you will get many more indications by looking at your opponent's benches, seeing if they have a Jinx or an Aurelia there, and figuring out if they're going for the same comp as you. Mastering power level comps is the best practice you can get for learning the game. You should be able to pivot to much more diverse comps, and train those adaptability muscles to become a more consistent player and get that top 4. So go out there and climb that ladder. As always, we love your feedback and continue to bear it in mind when creating our videos. Hit us in the comments with your experience of using the different types of comps that you learned today, and we'll see you guys in the arena.